Jen, you take over.
All right, we are live. Today is September 9th, 2020. This is our weekly or fortnightly design and usability focused meeting. Before we get into issues for this week, let's go around and do some quick introductions. Everyone can share what their name is, where they're from, and something fun if you want that other people might want to know about. I'll start. I'm Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California, and I have so much backdrop work to do right now. It is really great, but I'm also feeling very stressed, and I would much rather be spending my time working on 120, which comes out next week. So let's see, Greg.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece. I have so much work during my normal work. And I also have so many things that I need to review and work on. But I tried to sort of filter the milestone with the label that's for features that can only get in 120, just in an effort to sort of keep myself focused. But yeah, super excited about the upcoming release. And I'll pass it on to Robert.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. I've been doing other things for a couple weeks, just got back to backdroppy stuff, and then wrapping up getting layout wildcard module ready for release along with 1.20. Pass it to Lou.
Now I'm unmuted. I'm Luke McCormick. I'm in San Ramon, California, where currently it seems like it's less than 100 degrees, which it's been recently. I'm coding these days, so go figure. And maybe I'll do a little coding at some point. I'm interested in actually trying to tie together marketing for the upcoming release. So I'm looking for the list of milestones and issues and things like that, which I'm sure will come, but I have my eye out on that. And have we done Tim yet?
Nope.
Oh, I can go. And look, you were hard to hear at the beginning, and then you got louder at the end, just so you know. I'm Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And yeah, I've been, a week ago was really focused on the release, but in the last week have got back into client work, so I've been really busy. But have a couple of things I still want to talk about, and some things we can still get into the next release. So is that all of us? We got you, Robert? Yeah, we just got you. Okay, we're good.
All right. So Tim, I saw your tweet earlier about recipes. Do you want to jump right into that off the bat, or? Sure, you're muted.
Yeah, I got some noise in the background. It should be just about done. So, but I'll go ahead and talk. The question I wanted to, really quickly, we got this bug fix of the background into the next release of Drupal, which makes it possible to enable a config-only module, which is in a sense, could be used in a sense as a recipe, although there was still some limitations. I think it's, as we've discussed, it's a little too premature to have a big announcement that we have recipes. We still need to think a little there, and there is some discussion about whether or not modules is the best way to do recipes. Laren is working on, or has another proposal out there that I think we should at least look at. But in the meantime, I have a couple of config recipes that work on my own GitHub repo, and I'm just wondering if it makes sense to get them. I mean, it would be possible for people to test them out, like through the sandbox sites on backdrop.org if they were projects on backdrop.org, right? If I released them as modules. But I'm still not quite sure if we're to the stage where we want config-only recipes listed as modules on backdrop.org. And if I did do that, should I title them in a certain way, or I don't know. So we could just kick this can down the road, but I'm wondering I'm just looking for feedback. I guess there's nothing preventing me from just releasing these as modules, but I wanted to hear what other people thought.
I have an idea. So I saw this and I got all excited about more things that I wanted to do that I don't have time to do. So thanks, Tim. But one thing that I thought is if we start off by creating them as modules, we could add a new line into the info file, something that like could be changed at a later point in time. And then we could write a contrib module that could provide a user interface that would just list all of the items that happen to have that line in the info file. So it wouldn't be something that would be actively supported by core yet, which would give us time to change that if we didn't like it. But it would also give us a way that we could manage the recipes in a different place than modules. Obviously, for now, we know it'll work if you turn them on like a module, just like a feature. If you turn on a feature from the modules page, it'll turn on and it'll work. That does buy us some time to figure out what we want the other listing page to do. But I thought what could be a good first step was just have a page that lists them without anything else. And just that way you would know if you go to that list, you're like, okay, well, these 4 modules are recipes, because we're not going to be able to get that kind of filter action on the main module page. And that would give us the opportunity. So if you have, 6 recipes you want to release as a contrib projects, you can, and, you can put in the description or whatever that it's a recipe. But if people download it and use it as a regular module by itself, no problem, it'll still work. But it also gives us opportunities to choose in the future if we want to have more functionality specifically around recipes.
I also have some thoughts. I'm not sure, like I haven't put every thought together or thought everything through, but I was going through older comments because I was on long vacation. So I'm catching up with Zulip. There were discussions about resurfacing the minimal installation profile on the sets. And then we have some long-standing issues where we sort of like want to make it so that installation profiles can run post-installation. And I think that recipes might be a way to sort of like achieve that or some of that. But as I said, I haven't attempted to do it. So I don't know if there's any blockers with regards to that. So I'm really excited that we are slowly solving all the problems around those recipes, because it opens up pathways to be doing such things. There's an issue that says we should be adding recipes like, forums and things like that, things that can be, I don't know, automatic combination of, it could be themes, layouts, modules, and configuration that can be automatically sort of like put together and present or sort of like implement in a quick way, in a quick or automated way, things that now people have to either, follow manually and do one task at a time. But yeah, I sort of like in my head, I think that it opens the pathway to a lot of possibilities. So I'm excited about that.
Yes, Greg, there's a lot of opportunities there. I think, Jen, the most important thing that you're addressing is like, I think my biggest concern about just releasing these as a module is, like, what am I doing that might not be easily reversed if we make a change in policy? And anything from like naming them, should I include the word recipe in the name? And if I do, is that going to, and we end up creating a different project type, and then we don't really need it in the name. Is that a problem? Should I worry about that right now, or is that fixable later? And the other thing is like, is there something in the .info file that I can put there that would be helpful but not irreversible?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're saying yes.
Tim, is there short of releasing them, or is there a list of them that you have somewhere that's accessible? Is it on Zulip or forums or something?
I have 2 simple working recipes. I posted their links in a few places, including in the forum. If you go to the forum agenda item for today, or we're creating a post every week for topics for the agenda, and I put some details in there. So,
but
they're both very simple. And the other, yep. Well, I wanted to throw out one more question, because maybe you can answer that, which is the other thing would be, I could envision a recipe pack module that's just one module that has like 8 or 10 sub-modules, each of which is a recipe. They're pretty small and simple. And I just wanted to get feedback if that would be a better module, or if we should have an FAQ, which is really like 3 or 4 config files in a module all by itself. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure about the second question, but for the first question, we recently allowed, what was the name of the issue exactly? I think it was allow for support more things in .info files. So we could add a line that says recipe equals true for now. And then later on, maybe the project browser can prepend have a prefix in modules that are recipes, which says recipe colon the name of the thing. So that's one idea. But yeah, Jen has raised her hand. Go Jen.
So many buttons to push. Okay, so Tim, to answer your question, I don't think it's bad to put the word recipe into the name of the project, but I would not put it into the machine name or like the directory name. And that way it'll give us the ability to change that later freely if you want to, but we won't have to worry about like changing the GitHub repositories or messing with people's ability to update. I think that I like, Gregory, the idea of adding something into the info file, whether it's supported or not, we can decide that later at any point. We could change our mind. One thing I think we should do is for the package grouping, because that is currently supported by core, we should maybe standardize on that so that the package is always recipes. And then that way we'll already have it grouped on the modules page, and that'll make things a little bit easier. But beyond that, I don't know that anything else is required. I think if you come up with a suite of 6 recipes that you end up putting on all of your sites and you want to group them together in one module, that's totally fine. I also think people will probably want to pick and choose which recipes they put on their own site. And so having them individually is also fine. Eventually, we could end up with some tooling on backdropcms.org to make those options more straightforward, but I don't think it matters yet. And we can see how the community evolves around recipes before we need to make that decision too.
One of the things that were suggested for additional things in .info file is we already have dependencies, but there was another thing that, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Drupal core supports that is supplements or suggests. So basically, you have modules that depend on other ones that cannot be installed unless those dependencies are met. But there's modules that basically say this module works well with that module, but it's not required. So I'm not sure if it's implemented in Drupal core, but it was one of the things that we wanted to support through that issue that we solved, the add support more things in .info files. So that's another idea of how you could handle it. So if the sub modules that you mentioned are not can be distinct separate projects on their own, you can have them recommend each other or suggest each other our own if we settled it on a keyword.
Okay. So just one more question, and that's tangential, I guess. Is so my basic recipes were just config files, right? And then I did decide to experiment a bit with CSS, adding some custom CSS. And the basic config recipes right now, you enable them, they enable a bunch of config. There is no disable uninstall possibility, right? And if you did disable them, it's just not going to matter. Nothing's going to happen. At least I'm pretty sure. But if I realized I could add some CSS to the recipe, but if I do that the traditional module way, that would require that you keep the module enabled, right? If I disable the module now, of course, the CSS will no longer get loaded.
Yeah, that's
you could.
right.
You could.
Yep.
You could include a CSS injector thing and
that's nice.
put CSS into the CSS injector module, and then when your feature or recipe got disabled, it would stay there.
Yeah.
You mean add a dependency to the CSS injector module and then add configuration on your recipe for CSS injector? Is that
right?
It?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That will work.
But that won't work yet. Joseph, so I think one of the next steps in getting that kind of thing working in recipe, my understanding is the problem right now is that if I add a dependency to the module to the recipe for a module, the module installs first, creates a config file, and then when the module uploads its own config files, it does not overwrite the existing one. I believe that's what happens.
Okay.
So we can't just create a dependency. What we could do is instruct the user to turn on the dependence, the CSS injector module first, include the config, and then it would, if the module's already in, no, but that won't work either. There is, whatever. Actually, no, you can't, it won't. Well, I've got notes on this. I don't think we have to talk about this today, but we can't just require a module right now and then change the config.
One thing, because
we can require it, but we can't change the config on the required.
One thing that I thought of other use cases where that would be useful. So maybe if you can file an issue in the queue team where we make sure that the order of thing is when a recipe module is enabled, we make sure that the dependencies are enabled first, and then config importing happens last after all dependencies have been enabled, which means that basically we inject configuration into existing modules or required modules. Maybe that would be a solution, but yeah.
Sure, I'll create an issue. I think that's problematic, and we're going to have to talk about it. But there should be an issue to talk about it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think my config recipe questions have been answered, or enough for me to kind of just proceed with experimentation. So. I'll just quickly add, one of the reasons I was eager to do this quickly is because I think people will test it. If somebody can go to the sandbox site and download a recipe and test it, they're much more likely to sort of get a sense of like, oh, this is how recipes work, this is what I like, and start talking about them, rather than if they have to, set up their own sandbox site and download it from my repo and whatever. So.
Unless anyone else wants to bring up any other topic, I noticed that Andy is, I'm not sure if he's watching now, us streaming, but he's active in the Zulip queue, chat, I mean. There's a mention about Drupal. So Andy had an idea of whether it would be useful to generate stub, what he calls stub projects or sub projects. And this ties to the long-standing issue of how we implement CSS changes on core themes without breaking backwards compatibility. So I'm glad that he brought it up now recently prior to this meeting, because Drupal brethren are actually, they've added in Drupal 9, I think, maybe it's in Drupal 8 as well, through the UI and I think through via the command line, but also via the UI, you sort of like press a button, and what happens is Drupal generates a theme, which is not a sub theme, but is sort of like a point in time version of the core theme that you can then sort of like customize to make the theme of your site. Now, this has pros and cons, because if we fix things in the main sort of like core theme, those I don't know, generated themes would not inherit those fixes. But I would like to mention that because, yeah, it's happening. So it's being discussed at this point. So I don't expect any feedback now. I'm just bringing it up as a sort of like a potential solution or a feature.
Okay. What's next? Should we focus on design UX issues that we can still get in? Well,
Yes.
by definition, all of them can still get in. So again, I think we were saying this before the meeting started. While feature freeze has happened and we can't get any new features into 1.20, we can still get UX improvements and tasks and bug fixes. So if there are things that people still want to get in the next release that are qualified, or if you want to find out if it qualifies, those would be good things to talk about now.
Would this be a good time to re-ask where I can actually see, what do I search for to see the list of things that are in 120?
If you
So,
go to the backdrop issues queue, in the top, there's a bunch of buttons. One of them says milestones. And if you click on milestones, it'll show you a bunch of stuff in there. The 120 milestone should include only new features. So if you look at 119.4, that will include other stuff that can get in between now and then. So you can look at the 120 features. Those probably need cleanup in various ways, but most of them have follow-up issues that you'll find in 119 or 121. I don't know, maybe they're not. Gregory, do you have a better idea how to find this?
Well,
That's really terrible.
It's one of those three, so that actually gets me within range. I can look over.
Yeah, you can filter for things that have already been decided. Yes, you do what Jen just described. So we have a process where if someone thinks that a feature is worthy for the next release, they add a label which says milestone candidate minor. So you can filter by that label as well, but it will get you things that will they're potentially for the next minor release. If you're looking for 120, then you should do what Jen just described to get a list. So when I'm filtering by milestones, by the 120 milestone, I see 8 closed issues and 5 open currently. Of those 5 issues, 2 are feature requests. And in theory, they wouldn't be able to get in because we're past feature freeze. But these are merely open because we have follow-up subtasks. They actually have the status fixed label. So the main pull request, the main code change has already been merged. It's in 120. The reason why they're open is because they need a change record. There's more tasks to be done, or subtasks, as I said. The other 2 that are slated for 120, the other 3, 2 of them are tasks. One of them can be excluded because it's basically the preview release checklist. And the other one is a bug fix. Now, bug fixes normally get into minor releases. The reason why that's in 120 is because it fixes something that was added only in the 120 branch, if that makes sense. So it doesn't apply to the previous 119 branch.
I also just shared in Zulip the link to the release notes for the 1.20 preview, which just highlights a couple of the major things that got in. But that won't include things that are getting into the bug fix release.
For the purposes of this meeting, because we discussed design and UX issues, what you can do is you can filter all issues by the label design. So we can discuss things that they could be tasks and they could get in before this release, or we can generally discuss like for the future, but still keep it for design related tasks.
So I'm looking for the one I made. Is that somewhere in the flow of things?
Wait, the one about the messages?
Yeah.
That was already committed.
When?
That's been committed.
Configuration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be with the next release. Yeah.
We loved it. It's in.
It's
Your
in the
job here
preview
is done,
release.
Luke.
But how come I don't see it in the things?
So it might be in the
Might be closed.
119 milestone, but you have to search for closed 119.4.
It might also not be in the preview release notes just because it was more of a bug fix, considered more of a bug fix.
And if it's in
It's-
119.4, it might not show up there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point, Luke, is that even if 120 was not upcoming, your fix got in the bug fix release. So even if 119.4 was coming out now, it would be included in that as well. So it's already there. You can now consider start working on another issue.
I just want to know when its birthday is.
Its birthday will be because I guess we're planning to release one. If nothing critical comes out like a security release before that, we're planning to release, I guess, 119.4 at the same time or the same day with 120. So the way things are going, so it's going to be the same as like September 15th, I guess. You can mark that day.
Also,
Unless
if you
wanted to, go ahead.
if you want to find the issues from you can also do author:@me.
Well, I mean, I don't want to hug the show, but if another issue I'll mention is the dashboard or the breadcrumbs one. Because I know you commented on that, Greg, this week. If we wanted to talk about that, that could still get in, I think,
So
if there's interest in it, but I'm just not sure if there's interest in it.
which one? Jen?
Putting
Breadcrumbs
breadcrumbs.
one,
Sorry,
changing the
breadcrumb-
position.
of the
Yeah, you
breadcrumb.
just commented on it like yesterday.
Yeah. So I had a look. As I said, and I think there might be another issue filed by me someplace where I didn't find the order that these things were being rendered. I didn't find it reasonable. But then Jen has provided some screenshots in that issue where the design just makes sense, or it works. I won't say makes sense, but it just works.
Right.
So I don't think that there will be ever a time that will reach consensus because it's a matter of personal preference, I guess, and design. So instead of trying to force a thing, because your change basically was changing the hard-coded thing into something that can be more easily out of the box, sort of like changed to fit one's needs, I thought that maybe that would be a compromise. But then I noticed that in one of the previous messages by Jen, she was opposed to changing the hard-coded title to the multiple sort of like blocks thing. So maybe it's a good idea to discuss that. So Jen, wanna?
Yeah, so I'm not sure my voice is the best one to listen to here because I build most of my backdrop sites the way backdrop was intended to be built before we added all these nice features into it. So things like the flexible layouts and placing blocks all over the place, I don't do. So for me, I'm like, wow, I don't know that we should be placing blocks everywhere because that just makes a mess of your user interface. Whereas I feel like there's a lot of good features provided by these tools, and maybe my concerns here are not as valid. And I think if there are, there's 7 people in this room, and if 2 of you think this is a good idea and I don't, I think that the good idea wins. So
Yeah, so if you're not a backdrop user that has followed the history of backdrop, you don't know that the thing that we now call title block is actually a combo thing that has multiple, that affects how multiple things are presented. So you need to have internal knowledge. So I think that we're making a knowledge assumption there. Whereas if I was a new user and I was looking at the layout, if these are components, I would expect them to be there. So if you break them out, they're right there. So, and the order that they are rendered is actually sort of like respected in the order that the blocks appear in the layout, in the block management UI. So to me, based on what we also said, that it's easier to remove things rather than put things or figure out how to create things. So based on that theory or idea, I think that Team's idea or the compromise that we were discussing before makes sense. But yeah, that's my opinion though.
And what for the latest pull request, Tim, I still haven't looked at this, did you just place the 1 block or does this still include like 3?
Well, what it does, it basically, you can't, I'm doing a screen share because I just think
Yes.
that helps, right? So we can't put the breadcrumbs above the page title unless we place the page title as a block. So that's all it does is it adds the page title. And we're not looking at the actual pull request right now. I'm just looking at a regular sample site. So it just adds the title block into the top region, and then it puts the breadcrumbs above it. And
So
that's all it does.
Does it place the title block or does it place the title combo block?
Well, I don't remember what I did.
If
Okay.
you open the pull request,
It's a good question.
Yeah, I can have a look at it. I think so the page title is for sure weird. And there are some reasons why it's weird, and a lot of it has to do with just the, it's special. There's other things on the page like messages and tabs. The backdrop would be broken if they didn't end up on the page. And so we built layouts in a way, we looked at all the stuff that was in the page template and we're like, what of this needs to remain in the template and what of this should be a block? And at the very beginning, we decided the page title needs to remain in the template. The tabs and the messages need to remain in the template. So if they aren't there, the site will be broken. But that doesn't mean that, we now have the ability to also add them as other things. So the question is, the page title, I think, makes sense as a block because people are going to understand what that is. But things like messages and tabs, like people who are new to Backdrop, I don't know if you're going to think of that as a page element that needs to appear on the page. So I don't know. I could get behind adding the title block, but then the question is, do the messages and the breadcrumbs come out in a weird place if we do that?
or not come up at all.
I can learn the answer to that question very quickly by looking at Sandbox. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
waste our
So I
time.
think-
I'm on my way there right now.
Yes.
We can
So-
see exactly what I did.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So my take on that is that the title is basically a remnant of D7 and how we inherited things or how we adapted it. And because we didn't have the features that were added lately, namely the combo box and splitting those things, that's how we sort of like left it. But now we have a much better way of doing things. So why not do it for new sites?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like we can't get around the way we have it. Like that wasn't a mistake. We did it correctly, but we didn't figure out how to also provide the block feature until later. And so the question is now we're like, okay, so we have the original like safe implementation done, but we also have this optional block implementation. I'm fine with us putting the optional implementation in there. I don't think we can ever get rid of having the fallback page title. I think that's always going to remain there. But is it going to be really weird for people? And this is weirder than it is now, to go in there, edit their layout, remove the page title, and have the page title reappear on the page. Is that a weirder experience than having it be there by default and having to add a block in order for it to disappear?
So is there a technical problem with removing the title?
Yeah, then your title won't end up on your page. And if your title doesn't end up on your page, it doesn't set your like page title in the header tag. Like there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't happen if there's no title on the page. So I think
is it possible to have a page title block that just isn't deletable? I mean, that's always there and you can't remove it.
so you could move it, but you couldn't remove it.
Right.
I like that.
I like that as well.
Is there a reason we can't just have
Messages
the,
and tabs.
is there a reason we couldn't just populate the title metadata without having the title block on the page?
I mean, it probably is, but it's not something we can do in Backdrop 1. I mean, I think like, I'm not even sure. Yeah, I think we could make a non-deletable block in Backdrop 1. But there's just a bunch of stuff that like you create a node and you hit save and there's no title on the page, you're going to be really confused as to it's just this is the kind of thing that it's really easy for you to shoot yourself in the foot, where people wouldn't like you wouldn't expect not having a title. Now every time you make a node, you've got to go and like add some module in order to put the page title back. It's just
So what if you wanted a hero block and you wanted the title of your hero block to be bracket node : title bracket, so that you
I
can
would
have
do
your
that by not using a hero block. I just use a regular block, but I mean, style it like a hero. Just use the regular title block.
right, but non-technical users can't do that.
Right. Well,
Would be-
yeah, you need to install a contrib module or something to do that. But
Right.
I don't
And
think.
mess with templates.
What was that, Greg?
And mess with templates, like mess with code.
Yeah, you'd either have to mess with code or install a module that would give you a page title hero block.
I
Right,
like the
but I
suggestion
think-
that, sorry, go ahead.
But I think if you want to do fancy things like that, the barrier to entry of just figuring out tokens is much lower than the barrier to entry of figuring out how to edit your layout templates.
Yeah, but we don't have
Right.
anything that does token support in block.
Yeah.
Even in block titles yet.
Can I just ask if I'm still sharing my screen, because I tried to
You're not.
stop and
You're
No.
not.
not, okay.
So I think
When
it'd
we
probably be
initiate-
better to by default have the title block, but I think people should be able to turn it off.
I don't think there's a use case for that. I mean, I think you're always going to either want a title on the page, or you're going to want to say, in this particular instance, don't show a title. You're not ever going to say, I never want a title on my website. Because the title pulls, like, depending on what type of page you're on, it can be anything. It can be a no title, it can be a term title, it can be, custom configuration on a layout. Wherever that comes from, it's the same block, but it's a different data source. And so I think if you're going to be ending up to replace your, default page title, you've got to have something there instead. But that doesn't mean we can't have other options for how to display your page title. Like, I think a module that gives you a page title hero block is an excellent idea. I've seen that done a lot. I think it's pretty common. But I couldn't imagine in a scenario where you'd have a site that never had a page title.
Yeah, I couldn't either. So at the moment, the block UI, the block placement UI has the title, the default title block as a pseudo block, which is unmovable. And the problem now is that we need it to be placed between things or moved around. So I like Robert's idea where we lock it, so there's no option to delete it, but we still have it in a region as a block, which can be dragged around and repositioned.
What happens
or at
if-
least, or at least we can explore that idea.
Yeah. So I don't think we have time to do this lockable hero block thing for a backdrop 120. I think it's going to involve some more fiddling around. Like, there's also like weird use cases where, like, what if somebody went and like edited their configuration file and deleted the block? Do we like automatically edit the configuration file and save it, put the block back in for some page rendered? Like, there's a bunch of weird stuff. Where right now, because the page title is added in the template, you just check and say, like, is there a block there? If yes, remove the title from the template. If not, and there's just a bunch of extra precautions we would need to add in order to do that. But I do think that what we could do for 120 is the current pull request that Tim's working on, which is place a block instead of the, what did we call it? The pseudo block.
Yeah.
So Tim, I wasn't looking when you did your demo to figure out whether it was the combo block or the regular page title block, but I can look at that after this meeting. The questions are, is it weirder to delete the block and have a weird title show up? Or is it weirder to have a weird title in the first place and have to figure out you have to add a block to do it? And I think, Joseph, you said it's weirder the way it is now than the current proposed solution, which is to add the block. I think someone else said they wanted to add the block too. Was that you, Gregory, or Robert?
I would like us to explore the idea at least.
Yeah. Well, we have, sounds like we have a working pull request.
Yeah, let me just say that this is another example of developers manifesting their ideas into the UI without, it's like, it doesn't make sense to simple users. So we're trying to communicate the underlying technology and PHP logic into a UI thing, which ideally we shouldn't be doing. But yeah.
Oh, we can't break the API.
Yes, exactly. But so long as we're not breaking the API, provided that. So yeah, I would like to, at least when I say explore the idea, at least because in my head I can't think of the blockers before I actually start working on it. So if we start working on it and it turns out that we're not breaking API or existing templates and so on, we could do it. If we're breaking things, we could implement only. Sorry, go ahead.
All the current pull request does is place this block on new installs. So what we could do is like merge the pull request, try it for 6 months. If everybody freaks out, we just do it so that all new sites 6 months from now don't have it. Like, this isn't the kind of change that I think is going to, be
Yeah.
irreversible. We're not introducing anything new that's going to cause a problem. We're just trying a new default configuration.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah, I think it's just a matter of like, do we think it's better? And I might not think it's better, but I don't think that, like, I think if two of you think it is better, that's enough for me. Like, you guys want it, let's do it.
It's not a matter of two versus one or whatever. We have telemetry now.
Well, we don't
So-
have any data yet, Greg. I know
So,
telemetry, that's very exciting. However,
so
No, I mean, we can implement telemetry, and if the numbers change, then we can make an informed decision of what the default can be. It can either
That's
change
true.
or remain. That's what I'm
that's
saying.
true.
So
Yeah,
we-
yeah,
we-
that's a good point too.
Yeah.
All right.
So, okay, I'm just gonna. Minor point. I think that if I didn't know how, if I didn't have the experience of knowing how themes work in Drupal and came into this system and saw that page title was a special thing that's not in a region that can't be dragged around, I would assume that there was not a page title block somewhere else. I would not think to look for that. So I think having the block in there and then having the block in there, and then if they remove it, reverting to the pseudo block is a more discoverable implementation, which I think is good if we are trying to convey knowledge to the user.
Yep, and it makes sense.
Okay,
So is your,
Should we-
Tim, is your issue in needs code review status, or does it still need testing, or?
I'm looking at it right now.
The code change should
What
be
the label is.
straightforward.
I think
Decision it.
I'm looking
Make
for
decision.
somebody to say it works for them. So
Okay,
it needs feedback and testing. Oh, actually, I don't even have the need testing tag, and I should. I think, actually, what I've just got right now is needs more feedback. So I should change that to needs testing and needs code review.
We are on top of
Doing
the
that
hour.
right now.
I would
Yeah.
like to mention one issue, 5090, which is currently classified as a feature request, which is to replace the toggles, the more or less toggles. So this was dependent on the addition of the details form API element. So this is in core now, right? Or it's not? It is. It is. Yeah. So permission to reclassify that as a task and work on it over the weekend so that it can get in and.
I
so
think
the-
we need to ask a core committer about that.
Okay.
I think there was some nervousness about potential ramifications of that issue. I was really pleased to see how simple the code looked in order to make that change. But I think we need core committer eyes on it in order to.
Sure. Having said that, I need to mention, I'll actually change the works for me. And so the pull request needs to be rebased now.
Okay.
And the code will be even simpler because all the form API things have already been merged. So the change will be even more minimal. Last time when it was reviewed, it was RTBC, pending on, because we sort of like forgot that we needed to first get the API thing, the form API thing in. And the only request was that we add a polyfill. I don't feel that the polyfill now is part of this issue. It can be a follow-up for the main issue, which is, in general, adding a polyfill for, or not, for details elements. So over the weekend, I plan to work on this basically and see how simple the code is or not. And also, I think that the resistance was that my CSS selectors at that time were too generic, so that it would affect more things. I will try to specifically target those things now.
I want to add one issue too, if people are interested in reviewing stuff. We have this block consistency issue between layout, flexible layout template builder and the regular block UI. Greg, I saw you posted a comment with one issue with right to left button placement, something like that. I'll look at that today. But I think that one's pretty close too, and we could probably get it for 120.
Yep. Can you please remind me do you have the issue in front of you, the issue number?
Yes, it is. Hold on, I had it here a minute ago. How many tabs do I have open? this one. Oh. I'll find it in a minute. This one. Ha. Issue 5149.
51, you said?
5149. I'm going to put it in the agenda. I tried to put it in there before, but I didn't copy the whole URL, so it didn't work. Also, Tim made me too excited, so I made a recipes module. I'm gonna keep working on it. It doesn't list anything yet, but it's gonna list everything that's in the package recipes. For now,
Okay.
you can adjust as needed.
Yeah, that issue, Jen, is pretty close. Just a few RTO, CSS issues and things like that. So it's
Okay.
pretty close.
Great. Anything else before we wrap?
We're bleeding into the dev meeting, so we better stop that and start the other.
Tim, can you stop the live stream?
I don't know. Oh, yeah, I can. When I shared my meeting, my whole Zoom thing kind of crashed. But where? Dang it! Where do I stop? Stream. I don't know. I might have to quit and come back because I don't have my.
Can you make someone else or you don't have a?
Well, I'll try that. Let me try that. That seems to be working. Jen, I'm going to make you the host.
Okay.
There you go.
I can stop it. All right,
Good.
we're stopping the stream. We'll be back in a minute.